Hi, I'm Theo, and these broadcasts are to support the blogs on nomoreshee.com's website as well as the online classes. In this episode, we visit Mike and Trey at the Naked Bible Podcast. Welcome back to the No More She broadcast. In today's episode, we want to explore Mike and Trey's The Naked Bible Podcast. And those of you who've seen our previous broadcast know that this is all about getting information from the Bible to the masses and bringing faithful scholarship. And so it's called the Naked Bible Podcast because they want you to take the Bible as it is, not as people wish to dress it up to be. Most of you are familiar with this channel and familiar with my content will know how often that I refer to the works of Dr. Michael S. Heiser. We've done several broadcasts concerning him. We have them releasing on the channel regularly. He comes up often, and one of the main reasons that is so is because the focus of our channel has been how to get to scholarship, especially for those who are not in a place where they can get content. And so finding peer-reviewed academic scholarship on the internet is difficult unless your institution provides those facilities for you. And I myself, when I was a student, found many ways to overcome the challenges of my studies. And then on top of that, as I teach, I'm ever looking for ways for my students to be able to study. And so I'm looking for ways that on the internet they can connect. And if you know anything about Dr. Heiser and his work, you know he is a gateway. And he specializes so much of his time to try to bring those who are outside of academia as he acts as a gateway to get them into scholarship so they can begin to at least interact with it, begin to work with it. And there are many scholars, and we will from time to time highlight them, but Dr. Heiser, at least for me and for many that I have connected with on the internet, has been that main entry point, that main gateway into getting to more of the scholastic view, getting more into peer-reviewed resources. And so we want to continue his mandate to bring that to the masses and open it up for those who want to, because we all know that the internet is full of such terrible things. Internet theology can take anything, any view, and it can be as crazy and outlandish. And so it's nice that we can use someone like Dr. Heiser to get into. And so today in the video, although we've covered in a previous video a lot of what Dr. Heiser does, I want to drill down today on the Naked Bible Podcast. So if you type in nakedbiblepodcast.com into your browser, it's going to take you to Dr. Heiser's podcast. And if you use any podcast service out there, you can subscribe easily to it. But if you're not familiar with podcast or have like Google Podcast or I guess Apple Podcast or any of these other services, then you may have to start here. And obviously, if you go to the main page for the Naked Bible Podcast, you can see he's done 411 episodes. These are often weekly episodes. With 52 weeks in a year, you can see how long he's been at this. Obviously, new start here for those who are unfamiliar with what Dr. Heiser teaches and the way he introduces people into his content. That would be a good place to start. His latest podcast is something new in 2022, and most of you might be familiar with Dr. Heiser. Was recently diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he's undergoing chemotherapy for that. We are all in prayers for him. and things are progressing. And so we're hopeful for more positive outcomes, and we're thankful that we don't have many negative outcomes at the moment. And so in 2022, what he wanted to do is kind of start some new series and bring in some other scholars to supplement and try to tap into other scholars. Now, throughout the podcast history, those of you know, Dr. Heiser has chosen, curated many interviews with many different scholars to introduce components of their work that are important, and that should be looked at in usually one or two episodes. Maybe, I don't remember if I can recall anything longer than two parts, but maybe some other parts. Whereas in 2022, he's drilling down on some series, and his current series, the first series that he's decided to do, is Paul's use of the Old Testament. Bring in, in depth into that topic. And so obviously he has his question and answers, and he's done 49 question and answer sessions where people have emailed into them, and they have gone through the questions and curated again out different questions, and you can check those out. Each page, if you click on the page itself, allows you to download the file if you want to. If you go to an older episode like this one, then there's a transcript, and you can download the transcript as well. So each episode is transcript, and you can see which questions were dealt with or what the episode involves, and have a complete transcript of that. So this is something amazing. So if we just look through here, this is a new series. It's going to be I don't know how many parts, but they're not sure yet. But it's going to be a lengthy series on Paul's use of the Old Testament. But you can see some of the others where he's dealt with Jesus in the Old Testament, Exodus in the Old and New. This is where he introduces what they're going to do in 2022. Again, he just did. Now he's done many different books of the Bible. He's gone through them, and he did a series on Revelation. And in his series on the Bible, he typically goes chapter by chapter through certain books of the Bible and pulls out what you're probably not going to get from the majority of commentaries, and tries to introduce the audience to aspects that you won't find typical in commentaries that are related to Dr. Heiser's materials and content. And he has made those available, and we have mentioned that in another video. If you look up Miklot on the internet, and it's in another video, and you can again get access to his books that way. So check out the other video. But he just finished a long series in the book of Revelation, and he focuses on how John's use of the Old Testament in the book of Revelation. He's got an interview with Dr. Craig Keener on miracles, introducing a book that's available on that also points back to an earlier 2-volume series that Dr. Keener did on that. Beginner's Guide to the New Testament. So all these different ones that he's done in the past, and you can see that. So he's gone chapter by chapter through the book of Revelation. Goes back to the genealogical Adam and Eve issues there. So there's all kinds of things. Divorce and remarriage. He talks about Jonah and the chaos dragon. All these different topics, and it's just wonderful. And notice he's done the book of Ezekiel. He's also done the book of Hebrews. So he's done the book of Exodus, and he drills down again on Exodus in the Gospel of Matthew. And so these many different topics that he has chosen to go through and highlight. And so you can check out his series. He's done the book of Leviticus. So he's got all sorts of different topical issues where he deals with those problem passages in the Bible that many people are unfamiliar with. The book of Colossians he's done. Questions about like the baptism for the dead issue, authorship on the books of Isaiah and Job. If you want to get an understanding of that, this idea of Cain being the seed of the serpent, so many things. Introducing a ministry by Fern and Audrey that is helping lots of people and they offer classes online for people that need help in different ways. He visits the ETS and SBL conferences when they host them annually, and there's been problems during the pandemic. Goes back and discusses issues about this thing called the New Apostolic Reformation. What is that? Deals with Melchizedek, as she did a whole series on Hebrews. Just different ways of different guests, different ways of dealing with different topics related to the content that he produces. Again, he has tons of question and answers. He did the book of Obadiah, believe it or not. Talks about the bronze serpent and Moses. Talks a little bit about Greek New Testament manuscripting. There's a couple of episodes on that. Here's an earlier one, and there's a later one. David Burnett is a guest that comes on all the time. That's really good. Does a little work with Galatians, obviously the book of Enoch. These ideas of the lake of fire, stones of fire, and the book of life. Paul talking about a spiritual body in 1 Corinthians 15. This head covering is another popular, very popular episode, number 86 on head coverings, that people go back to time and time and time again. Ron Johnson, who did some stuff that helps Mike with the New Testament aspects of some of his. Now, when he first did the podcast, though, I want to highlight this. At the early stages of the podcast, he did topics like baptism, but as he's going through baptism, and then he does the Lord's Supper, and as he does the Lord's Supper, he is also, while he's dealing with those issues, he's also teaching in the very early podcasts of how they should tackle the Bible, how they should, study the Bible. And so I encourage you, these older episodes where he began the podcast and he was doing it by himself, it's trying to lay a foundation so that anyone who is new to biblical studies can know how scholars approach the text and get better readings than the layperson. And so I really encourage these early sessions to begin to start figuring out how to take the Bible's own context seriously and how to understand what's going on. Talk about genres and Bible stories and how you should look at them, the literary context behind the Bible, studying the ancient languages. And so he did that for, 33 episodes. And then Trey come on board and, helped him to kind of relaunch the podcast, and they began with the book of Acts. And from there, the rest we can say is history. And so over 400 episodes of the podcast. And I would encourage anyone who, again, as we said in a previous video, you can go to a Google search bar, you can type in the name Heiser and then the topic you're interested in, and it's probably going to take you to where he most likely has addressed this. But I wanted to highlight just today the Naked Bible podcast and all the specific things that he has done and the books of the Bible. And now, as I said, new in 2022 is he's bringing on guests who are going to take a longer look at some of these issues that are very much connected to Dr. Heiser's material, but where Dr. Heiser does not have the specialization that his guest would in these areas to dig them out more fully and help you. And it's a weekly podcast, and I found out about it late after Dr. Heiser had started, and while doing my master's, while doing my PhD, I found the time to listen to these when I'm, doing chores or when I'm somewhere on a, long trip or whatever, so that I can listen and study and begin to learn and develop my understanding and help me with my studies in innumerable ways. And so I would encourage you, this is very good to help you to get through and understand what's happening. And so that, they have the store here for those who like that kind of thing, as requested by listeners. The conferences, which hopefully, and tours and things that will hopefully kick off again in the future as Dr. Heiser's health improves and his availability improves, and hopefully with the change of coming maybe out of the pandemic eventually, where our life gets back to some kind of new normal, then we will see him out and about again. And you can follow that here or at his website. But I just wanted to highlight the Naked Bible podcast in this session. Thank you very much, and God bless you for listening. Stay tuned for more episodes and videos to help you with your journey from nomorec.com.